Yeah, so I think we're live now, so we can stop staring awkwardly at the camera. Welcome to Too Good to Be True, Fact or Fiction. I am your moderator, Barbara Ann Wright, and I'm going to introduce you to my smiling, intelligent-faced panelists, and then I'm going to be grilling them mercilessly with some questions. So let's start out with Anne Shade. Anne Shade has a passion for writing stories about women who love women. Her stories cross many genres with one common factor: BIPOC representation in all her main characters. When Anne isn't writing, she is coordinating dream weddings and daydreaming up plans for her future bed and breakfast, where she will transform into Annie Shade, apparently. Next, we have Suzie Clarke. Award-winning novelist Suzie Clarke is an Ohio native. You don't know how many times I said Idaho when I was practicing, and lives with her family in Northwestern Ohio. Suzie has a medical and business background. Before writing full-time, she worked in public health, helping families and women in all aspects of their lives. She grew up as a middle child surrounded by brothers, which is why she loves a good laugh, being outside, and writing about strong women who know how to stand up for themselves. Her debut sapphic novel, Moon Shadow, published by BSB, was released January 2020. Her current release and fifth book, Western Blue, is available through Bold Strokes Books and other outlets. You can find her on the web at suzieclarke.com and in Facebook at suzie.clarke.1614. Dena Blake. Dena Blake is an award-winning author of 13 contemporary novels. She's a romance writer, eternal optimist, would-be chef, tech nerd, and occasional auto mechanic. How did I not know you cooked? How have you never brought in goodies to anything I've ever been to?
All right. I
never looked at Dena's Instagram account. She's always posting food.
I cannot look at the food that I cannot have. Her books are steamy, sometimes funny, and always full of angst. Georgia Beers. Georgia Beers has written more than 30 novels of sapphic romance teacher's pet. Yes, she's been here for a while and loves taking her readers along on the journey while her characters fall in love. Writing is her dream job, and she can't imagine doing anything else for a living. When not writing, she's reading, watching a scary movie, loving on Archie and Emmett, her dog and cat, or being run ragged by her 4 adorable grandbabies. And it says this in her thing, so I have to read it. Yes, she looks way too young to have grandbabies, but she does, and there are 4 under 2. Send help and diapers and wine.
Please.
And last but certainly not least, Tagan Shepard is the author of 10 books of sapphic fiction, including the 2019 Goldie winner, Bird on a Wire. When not writing about extraordinary women loving other extraordinary women, she can be found playing video games, reading, or sitting in DC Metro traffic. Fun! She lives in Virginia with her wife and 2 ridiculous cats. I love all the strong women loving strong women in here. I feel like you should all write crossovers now where all of your women meet all of your other women. I think that would be amazing. Okay, so let us just jump right in here. I'm going to pick one of you at random. Whoever looks like she's not paying attention, I'm going to pick her and ask her the question: in what ways do you blend fact with fiction in your stories? Who goes first? George is looking down. It's Georgia.
Look at my notes.
I don't care. You got caught.
It's hard to pinpoint when you use fact. I mean, this is a really difficult subject. I found I was taking notes today and I was like, I think that you have to. I think it's almost inescapable to not put some of yourself or some of your world experiences in your writing. I don't do it intentionally. But I know we were talking about real world locales was one of the things. And I have a made up town that the majority of my books take place in, and my editor a long time ago referred to it as not Rochester. Right? Because I kind of use things that are similar that are here because I basically hate to research. So I don't want to put it in a real place because I won't research well enough and I will get caught screwing up. So I want someplace I can make up, quite honestly.
That's why I write fantasy, actually. Yeah.
You are smart. I should try that. But I do think that the more I age in both life and in my career, the less I use I'm going to say real people. I mean, I've never used a real person, but real experiences. But I will always, I think, use feelings and bits and pieces of myself because I don't think that I can't, if that makes sense.
It does. And Shade, what about you?
Yes, I do use real life experiences, bits and pieces of myself, in my characters. It's more prominent in Love and Lotus Blossoms than it is in any of my other stories. And I also use real, I place them in real locations, real, New York, Chicago. If there's some place I haven't been, unlike Georgia, I love doing research. So I feel like, I can escape there. Just if I can't be there, I might as well get all the research I can to kind of mentally escape.
Mm-hmm.
So, like for instance, in Three Wishes, the island of Akiba, and / Nose Bay is actually a real island off the coast of Madagascar that has a resort and everything in it. So Nose Bay is a real place, but it took a lot of research to figure out how to kind of weave that into starting off as a mythical place and turning it into a real place. But I do love putting some bits and pieces of reality in it. So, because it helps the reader to kind of equate or kind of relate to the characters.
Right. And they might invite you for giving them a free plug.
Exactly. Take me to
Yes.
Nose Bay.
Let's hear from Suzie Clarke. You're muted, Suzie. That's still muted. There you go.
Okie dokie. Thank you. I do use real places. I hadn't in the past. Obviously, I'm from Ohio, so I obviously write related to Ohio, or I also spent some time in the South growing up, so I'm comfortable writing about South because I know it. But as far as actual places, this in Enigma, in 2022, when I wrote Enigma, I did purposely make it in my hometown in Barberton, Ohio. That was so exciting. I'd never done anything like that before, but I wanted I just wanted it there. Akron, Ohio, you may know that there's a lot of big factories there in Akron, Ohio, huge Firestone, Goodyear. And so it was a natural place for me to put the airplane factory. Well, there's no airplane factory in and around that area at all. So that was made up. And that was fun to make up an airplane plant that was right in my hometown, which it really wasn't, but it worked out real well. So yeah, I've done it, and I think it's fascinating. It was fun. I had a lot of help from the library there in my hometown in Barberton. And the people were so excited that I was writing about my hometown in this book, and they just rallied around me. They thought it was great. So that was a good experience.
Oh, it sounds really cool. Tagan.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say that I'm kind of like 60-40 fact and fiction because I don't have that great of an imagination, honestly.
Like, it's a terrible thing to say when you're trying to sell your books. She has a fantastic imagination. Don't listen to her.
No, it's especially like restaurants and shops and stuff like that. If I'm writing in a real world locale, like, so my April release last year was set in the DC metro area. It actually, the house I was living in at the time, like the character lives on the same street, just because I could picture the drive home, right? You know, I could picture all of that and it was easier for me. My October release is set in a fictional town called Bucks Mill, Virginia. But like the main street looks surprisingly like the main street in my in-laws, where my in-laws live. And some of the neighborhoods look like where I grew up and stuff. I feel like if I can picture it in my head better, or if I'm familiar with it, I can feel like I'm walking the streets, then I feel like the readers, I hope at least that gets across to the readers, that they feel more comfortable. So yeah, I tend to put a lot of fact in there just so I can make it feel real.
Well, then using somewhere where your relatives are, if somebody tries to find you based on your books, they're just going to find them. So that's fine.
Exactly.
Dena, what about you?
So, writing about real world kind of comes naturally depending upon the story to me. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Places, I've written about California where I grew up, and I also wrote about Oklahoma, some areas where actually I got some flack from a reader one time that said it wasn't at all like Norman, Oklahoma, and I'm very familiar with Norman, Oklahoma, so it's a matter of where you've been in that area. So I try to, in recent books, I try to do the fictional thing, create a town or an area around something I visited before, you know, and then just make up a name for it. So just
Oh, that's
combine different areas. So.
Well, that's great. You stay away from like the one person who's like, that's not my Oklahoma.
I know.
I didn't think there would even
Apparently
be
you
that
go to
many,
that
but
side of town, you know, I was on the wrong side of town.
oh, I see.
That's where I hang out, you know.
Okay. So next question. Have you always blended fact and fiction in your stories? Did you ever shy away from pulling in your personal experiences or feelings, maybe in the beginning, or later than that? And let's start with Anne this time.
Yes, I have. Even when I was writing hetero romances, I did a lot of historical, and I put historical characters in it. For instance, my very first book features the Underground Railroad. So Harriet Tubman is in there with some way, conductors of the Underground Railroad. Their music, there was another book that I wrote, contemporary one. Some contemporary musicians at the time were kind of featured in it. So I try and bring in as many elements as possible to have readers be able to be like, oh, that could be me, or I can relate to that, or this could believe that this could be a real person walking around New York City, Chicago, or wherever the story is taking place, Oklahoma, and bring them to life. To me, that it makes me feel like my characters are real, if it's realistic. Even with the supernaturals that I'm starting to kind of get into, trying to keep up with you, Barbara. I try and bring elements, realistic elements within the stories. Like the one I'm currently working on takes place in New Orleans. So
Nice. I like that. I've gotten more into writing like that myself these days, where it's in the real world, but just weird as hell. What about you, Dena?
So I'm going to say I probably have pretty much all the time written on real world stuff. I just embellish it a lot. You know, change some of the names, change some of the areas. It's easy to build on people you know, and kind of sometimes they are quirky already, and then sometimes you just make them quirky because that's kind of the way you see them. You know, I mean, even in my neighborhood, I have names for all my neighbors. Hydroponic guy lives next door, you know, because he always has this huge bright light going on in his house. But that's just something I might put in one of my stories because I find it weird, or I should say interesting. Maybe not weird. But
Yeah, I was like, your neighbor grows weed. You know that, right?
in his living room, apparently. So there
Yeah.
you go.
Well, I mean,
You know.
where else would you put it? I mean, are you ever afraid someone's going to read your books and be like, I think that's me?
No. Well, maybe some of my close friends, but I always let them know that something happened in our younger days if it's going to show up in a book. So.
And somebody just commented on the chat roll, let's hope the neighbor's not tuning in. Or maybe they are. Maybe they'll bring over a nice present for Dena later.
Yeah.
Is there a hydroponic guy in the chat?
Yes. Can he speak up? Is he coming to the next convention? Tagan, what about you?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to my characters, especially, I've gotten a lot more comfortable bringing in real life experiences. I think so I tend to be more of a plot-driven author, and so I'm working more on being more character-driven. And so when I focused on that, I found kind of like the same with the setting. I had to picture it, right? So I had to kind of picture these characters more than I had in the past. And I think you can definitely tell the difference in the way that my readers relate to my characters, the way I relate to my characters, when you bring in something from the real world. I mean, Yeah, it's a little scary, right? Especially when like the reviewers or an editor says like, that's weird, that's not relatable. And I'm like, oh, I do that all the time. But there's strength and vulnerability. And so I think I'm comfortable with that.
Oh, good. And don't stress the whole like, I have no imagination, my characters aren't relatable. Buy my books, please. I don't know how well that's gonna work. Suzie Clarke.
Absolutely. I try to I can't help it. I can't help put myself into some of those characters, and my attributes and are people that I know. One of my favorite things to do, and my family will attest to this, is if I've got some interaction that's negative with another person that I haven't gotten along, I love to put them in a book and kill them off or something. It's very rewarding to me to do that, or put them in a situation that they're just not going to get out of. It's very rewarding. So yeah, I do. I love blending fact and fiction, real places. To me, it gives my stories more legitimacy. For example, when I wrote, I use Enigma because it really was full of real life situations. It was set during World War II, and I used a ball. Everything about that, the place, except for the factory, everything was pretty much the way it really was back in 1941 for that particular story. And I used the ballroom, the lakefront ballroom that was down the street that my parents had gone to when Glenn Miller was there. And that was the situation that I used. Of course, I made up what it looked like because I didn't find a lot of pictures of what it originally looked like. But the place was an actual place, and Glenn Miller really did go there and play that ballroom. So yeah, and it's fun to do that. I really enjoy it.
Nice. And now your friends are going to be scouring your books, looking to see who gets murdered and whether that looks like them at all.
No, I wouldn't be into my friends.
That they
I
know.
wouldn't do that to my friend. No, I wouldn't do that to my friends.
What about you, Georgia?
I think in the beginning of my career, especially, I did it a lot. I used experiences that I had. I used feelings that I had. Probably more because I wasn't quite comfortable with my confidence as to whether or not I was a decent writer. So I'm like, if I use these real things, but then as you get better at the craft, you learn how to blend them in a little better. You can still use them, but it's not quite so obvious. And I think it's, as Suzie said, I think it's impossible to not use your own feelings. If something's happening to my character, the first thing I'm thinking is, how am I going to feel about this? How would I feel about this? What would I do? What would I say? I mean, how do you not do that? Even if the character is not you, even if the character is very different than you, how do you not say, how would I react to this? Do you know what I mean? So I think it's impossible to not put your own feelings in there. I don't think you can avoid it. I have pulled from real life experience. I don't quite so much anymore. And one of the reasons is, again, what Suzie said, I don't want any of my friends going, hey, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That happened to me once early on. I had two characters having a conversation, and Ray Spangler sent me an email later, and she was like, we had that exact conversation, right? And I was like, we did? And they were like, yeah, don't you remember? Blah, blah, blah. And it was like in the same place. So I hadn't even realized that I had done it. So I tried to be a little more careful after that, and not quite so blatant in my ripping off real life to put it in my book.
Yeah, I could just picture you like going to a coffee shop with a pad and pen and eavesdropping on the table next to you.
I have done that.
Oh, okay. Well, coffee shop people up in New York.
That I know.
Oh, okay. Well, coffee shop people in New York and hydroponic guy, if you're listening, this is about you. Beware.
It's just like when you don't want to leave dinner just yet because something is going on at the next table. Hey, I need to hear this. Yeah.
I've never done that, but I will now. And
my wife goes so crazy. We go to dinner and I'm always eavesdropping on the table, and my wife is like, can we just have dinner and not write a book? And I'm like, no, that's not.
No, yeah, we can't really do that. No, you should just put your phone on record. Then you can just pay attention and you'll get it all later. And oh, that is how we get arrested. Never mind. Don't
And
do
it's out of
that.
context by that time too, Barbara, you know, remember.
No, I think the lawyers will get calls. Okay, so have you ever found it cathartic to write about a troubling or painful experience and turn fact into fiction, just so we can all start the crying part of our program? And let's go to Suzie Clarke first. Yeah.
You know, when I thought about that question before, when you sent it to us, I thought, no, I haven't. I really haven't. But that's not true, because there's a couple of things that, and I'm not going to be specific, sorry, but there's a couple of things that happened in Moonshadow that they weren't really exact real life, but they were similar. And I found myself I had to stop writing one day and just go for a walk, because it was that. It pushed some buttons in me, evidently, and started some feelings that I, wanted to get out of them and not have them. So yeah, I have on occasion. Now, I don't know that it's purposely that I've done it, because to me, my writing is just really separate. I try to keep it really separate from what I'm like. For example, if I'm writing a character, I don't want my own feelings in that character, but they're going to be similar, and you can't help it.
As I've transitioned from being a writer to being a writer and an editor, I've learned when looking sometimes at people, especially first-time writers, that if they come to something very emotionally painful, they kind of pull away. And it's almost like a camera panning back, from being very close up on the emotions to coming back. And I have to tell them, no, keep forward. Let's jump in those emotions, stay with them. And they're like, damn you, I did not want to feel real things. And I always have to say, yes, we all know feelings in real life are stupid, but we have to have them in the books. So Tagan, please tell us about some of your stupid feelings.
Yeah, stupid feelings. No, I do. I definitely have pulled for my second book, Bird on a Wire, the one I won the Goldie for. So that it's about a character whose mother died unexpectedly, and she's left dealing with grief, but also being alone with this sense of anger and betrayal that she still feels about her mother's reaction to her coming out. And so that book was published about 2 months before the 10-year anniversary of my own mother's death. And I'd really struggled with my grief over that, because she and I were very close. But just like Birdie, I had to deal with the fact that we never talked about resentment, honestly, that I still carried from when I came out. So, after that, I'd be angry that I was alone with the pain of that. And then I would feel guilty because I was angry at her when she was gone, and then, alone because she's gone. So, so every year on the anniversary of her death, there's this one part of the Appalachian Trail I would go hiking on. And that was kind of how I processed my grief. But once I wrote Bird on a Wire, once I put all of that into the book, I didn't have to do that anymore. It's like, doing that took me to a new stage of grief. And it was really cleansing. It was really wonderful. Honestly, having the validation of winning the Goldie for it when it felt really close was so amazing. So thank you to the community for embracing that book. But yeah, it can be a great way for us writers to kind of work through that. And that's what Bird on a Wire was for me.
Awesome. Georgia.
I like to say that, no, I don't do that, but of course I do. And it is cathartic. And I think I try really hard to make sure that I'm the only one who knows, that I'm the only one who can tell that this is maybe a real experience, or this is something that I dealt with, or this is something that happened to me. As we said earlier, I don't really want family and friends reading my books and seeing themselves in there. I don't want to do that to somebody, but as a writer, as somebody who does this, all of us, this is a benefit of our job. We can do this. We can work through some things. I think as long as you're subtle about it, and you're not hurting anybody, then it's good for us. I've had it's interesting that Tagan, that you talk about your mom, because I realized a couple of years ago at a conference, I realized that I had some daddy issues, because I'm always writing characters with daddy issues. And I was like, where does that come from? And I lost my father in May. And so I'm dealing with as you said, Tagan, stuff that we didn't ever talk about, stuff that I never got a chance to talk to him about because I never brought it up, and he was not an emotional, let's sit down and talk kind of guy. So in the back of my head, I know that some of those things are going to end up in future books as I work through those. I think there are a lot of bits and pieces of things that have happened to me, of things that I have seen happen, of things that I know of that have happened, that do show up in my books. But as I said, I try really hard to make sure that I'm the only one who knows that. And I think that, Barbara, your question said, you know, did you find it cathartic or do you find it troubling? And I think that there are writers who don't disguise well, and I find that troubling. When you can read somebody's book and be like, oh, that's this person and this person and this person. Yeah, that's a little troubling. But I think if you do it well and you do it subtly and it's just for you as the writer, I think it can be super cathartic.
Oh, troubling in that you feel bad for them, or troubling in that you think everyone is going to look at it and be like, that me. And
I
then
feel
suddenly
bad
they're going to
for
be,
I feel bad for them airing other people's dirty laundry.
aha, okay. I thought you meant like they're suddenly going to have a target on their back or something, but that's the kind of
No.
world I live in.
I mean,
so.
it could be that too. It could be that too. I mean, I don't know.
Mhm. Do you want to take them aside and be like, no, this is not how we do.
You got to disguise that better.
Hide your crazy.
Exactly.
Dena.
So I'm gonna agree both with Tagan and Georgia. I didn't do mine intentionally, but I wrote about the loss of a parent, and it just brought that whole thing about losing my mom back to me. And it kind of bled into my writing. And I did find it cathartic because you kind of work through some of those emotions that you kind of put in a closet and locked up there and don't want to pay attention to. I mean, it's probably a good 3 or 4 years after my mom passed that happened. But I think, like Georgia said, it is good as a writer if we're able to do that and put it out there, to deal with whatever emotions, family issues or friend issues, in our writing. I think that helps you grow as a writer as well. To me, it does anyways. So
Agreed.
I do find it cathartic. So
Last but not least, Anne.
I've definitely done it. Like I said, Love and Lotus Blossom is kind of that was a huge cathartic moment for me. At one point writing it, I actually had to step back and step away from it because it was becoming too raw. And even though the story isn't exactly my story, I am that character. I am Janess, and some of her experiences were my experiences, especially having it take place where I grew up and remembering the streets and walking out, and then how my 14-year-old self felt at that time, and then how I feel at her age when she finally comes into herself and comes out to herself and realizes that was very raw for me. So but like I said, it was also cathartic because it made me realize I made the best decision for myself, just as she made the best decision for herself. And I had hoped that my whole reason for writing it was to help others like me, who are late in life, coming out and stepping their toe out the closet, in whatever capacity, however they identify. So it was very, very good for me to put the story out like I did.
Oh, that's awesome. So I feel happy and sad for all of you. At this point, I want to remind people that if they do have questions, to put those in the Q&A box, and I will have that open, so I'll be looking at that. But it sounds like everybody's kind of saying the same thing, is like, use your emotions and your stuff in your life, but ground it so firmly in the characters that other people around you won't be picking at your business. Or each other's business, or your neighbors with the hydroponic gardens business.
Hydroponic guy.
So my question from my editing side, does writing about your own experiences or facts, or if you know that you're dipping into these waters, does it make it harder to edit or change them later because you're like, no, this is the way it happened, or this is the way that I felt? And who has not gone first? I think Tagan has not gone first yet.
I didn't really have a lot of content edits on Bird on a Wire, so that
Woo!
wasn't a factor, right? Like, this is not a pat myself on the back, but
It should
but,
be.
like, you know, but so there was another book I wrote, Swipe Right, and it had a love interest with a chronic illness. She had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I wrote that book because I have a friend, Renee, who is a lesbian with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she has had a horrible time dating, and she's also never seen herself in a book. And that's one thing that I got from this community that I wanted, I guess, to kind of give to her. So you know, when I wrote that book and then I get the edits back, that was much harder for me. The idea of letting Renee down when I'm using some of her personal experience. And, you know, there's also that worry of, like, you know, I'm writing a character outside my sphere. I don't want to be that person who gets it wrong, who gets that experience wrong. And yeah, so I did feel a lot of pressure. It was very challenging for me to make sure that I got it right, but stayed true to the story, and didn't make that character Renee, but also didn't take away that chance for her to see herself. So yeah, it was a challenge. I think you know, in the end she liked it, and that was the important thing. And I think that I stayed true to the character. So, but it was definitely a lot of pressure and very challenging.
What about you, Dena?
What was the question again?
Somebody's not paying attention. Maybe
I
hydroponic
am,
guy
yeah.
has already come. Does writing about your own experiences or facts make it hard to edit or change them later?
I don't think so. I don't have a lot of major content edits in my edits.
There's
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah. So apparently I wear my feelings well on my sleeve. I don't know. But, you know, everything kind of leads into those emotions, and really it's about the emotion, not necessarily the words or how you put the words on the paper. So I really haven't had any issues with that.
Okay. Oh, how about you, Anne? Everybody's going to be like, nah, just you, man.
I also, content editing is an issue. I really haven't, because there's only been the one book, Love and Lotus Blossoms, that there was more fact than fiction in. I don't have that issue too much. Only when it comes like with Masquerade, because I was writing a historical piece and had historical, real historical elements in it. And maybe the you know, it's not, there isn't much information that's known. So it's like, well, are you sure about these dates or something like that? That kind of comes in. But other than that, no.
Okay, so we're over 3 so far. What about you, Suzie?
First of all, Dena, don't feel bad, because I was going to ask her to repeat the question too.
You shouldn't have admitted that.
I can't help myself. Actually, I have to agree, because with everyone else, and this is why, when my book goes to editing, I know that if something's going to get cut, unless I really fight for it, it's because it's going to make the book better. So I don't really have an issue with it. And the personal things that I do maybe slip in, first of all, there's not that many. If there was something really in there and it got cut or left out, I'd have to say to myself, you know, it's better for the book, better for the story. So I don't really have an issue with that at all.
I love you from the bottom of my editing heart, Suzie.
You can.
I want to hire you to talk to some of my clients, please.
But I'm not saying, though, that I wouldn't fight for something if I genuinely felt. But I've always told beginning authors when they've talked to me, I've always told them, if your editor says to cut it, look at it really closely. And if they say cut it again after you've expressed your feelings, cut it.
I want that on a pillow. I want it. I want it
That's
so
a lot.
badly. Georgia.
I will piggyback onto both Suzie and Tagan because I have similar thoughts on both of those things. As far as what Suzie said, you have to trust your editor. I mean, I've been in this game a long time, and early on, my edits would come back and I would sit in a corner and cry, and I would give myself a couple of days because it was so emotional and oh my God, they want to change what. But you know what? Your editor knows what they're doing, and your editor's only goal is to make your book the best book it can be. So you need to trust your editor. It's totally fine to have a discussion about something you disagree with, but you have to trust your editor. And then as to what Tagan said, the only times that I would have been a little trepidatious about it is if I was worried about letting somebody else down. So like when I wrote mine, we're going way, 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 way back. It was about a woman who had lost her wife, like to death. Her wife had died. And I talked to my friend Erin that I worked with at the time, who had lost her husband. We had all kinds of conversations about what that was like. What did you go through? What were your concerns? So if that had come back to me and my editor had like shredded some of those conversations, I would have had a problem because I didn't want Erin to read the book and be like, well, we didn't talk about any of this. This is not what I said. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I would have wanted that to be genuine for her. But other than that kind of a situation, I think you need to trust your editor.
Oh my God, can I record you all saying these sorts of things? So my BSB authors are good as gold. But some of my other clients out in the world, I'm like, dang, because they're like, that comma is my life. I'm like, let go of it. Let go.
I've only pushed back once on something that my editor had commented on and and it was very important to me to keep that, and she kept it in. But other than that, like Georgia, in the beginning, I was like, I'm not cutting that. That's my wife. That's how can you? Now it's like, okay.
You're changing my voice.
No, they're gone.
Exactly.
They're gone. Get used to it. Let go.
Yeah, I have to agree. The one time I pushed back with Ashley Bartlett, who's my editor, and then all the reviews, and she's like, okay, reviews start coming in and they're all agreeing with her. I'm like, yeah. Push back again.
I'm not gonna lie.
How long did it take before she came to you and said, see?
You know,
5 minutes.
Waited for that perfect moment.
Yeah, it just very slowly share. Yeah, that's a feeling that I'm kind of liking. Okay, so what is an event that's happened in your stories that's closest to a real life event that anyone has ever found maybe hard to believe, or you've had to change it to actually make it more believable, going with the whole truth is stranger than fiction sort of thing? And I'm just going, since all of you might not even have one of these, I'm just going to open this up and say, one of you jump in if you've got one. Suzie, there she goes. No, she put her hand up first, Georgia.
Who did?
I'm sorry, Georgia.
Go for it.
I have to say that in Moonshadow, my very first book, they have a plane crash and they're stuck in Alaska, and they have to survive to get home. I have to say that experience that I had was, I spent 10 days on the Appalachian Trail alone. It wasn't supposed to be alone, but my partner got sick and had to go home. And rather than leave, I spent 10 days by myself on the trail. So that's probably the closest that I have to those experiences. And it was just so easy to write, what they were going through on that. Of course I have, writers have great imaginations. That's part of why we're writers. And it was just so fun to put those experiences in. And of course, my nursing experience too, my medical experience came into play with that one too. So yeah, I'd have to say of all my books that's the one I drew on most for my experiences.
It'd been wild if you would have encountered Tagan out there on one of her Appalachian.
It might have been exciting.
I know you.
It might have been there.
Hey, we might cross paths. We don't know.
Okay, Georgia, what was yours?
It's not my own experience, but when I wrote 96 Hours, it's a romance set during 9/11. And there were a lot of people that were like, what? How, what? But it was a thing. I saw it on NBC News during the Olympics. They did a story on Gander. where's Gander? Up north in Canada, Newfoundland. And there was a couple, all of the planes landed, and there was a couple there was a man from Texas and a woman from England, and they were stuck together and they fell in love. And I was like, this would be a great romance. So it like actually did kind of happen. I just put my own spin on it, but people were like, whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then the book came out and they were like, oh, okay. All right. But yeah, people didn't believe that was an actual thing.
Oh, that's wild. Tagan, Dena, or Anne?
I was to say, I have
Yeah.
one. It's kind of silly, but I'm going to share it anyway because it's funny to me. So I'm currently in edits for my next book. And like I said, I live in the DC Metro. And anyone who lives here knows our traffic is atrocious, and that 90% of that is due to how bad Maryland drivers are. And so I have a couple of jokes about that in my book. And Ashley my editor came back and was like, come on, Maryland drivers can't be that bad. And I'm like, look, I drive next to these maniacs every day. Whatever you think, triple that, and that's half of what it is. And I don't know whether she just believed me or got tired of hearing like wackadoodle stories about driving on the Beltway, but she finally accepted Maryland drivers are bad. So
any of readers from Maryland on the thing, please buy Tagan's books.
Talking about you. She's talking about you.
Yes.
You
and
specifically, I'm sure.
yes, and drive better.
Exactly.
Dena or Anne?
So my story is not nearly as impressive as the rest, but I've had some very drunk, emotional friends in my youth, and at one party with a lot of people, one of my friends ended up in the bathtub just crying her eyes out, totally drunk, and that was a little unbelievable for my editor, but it actually happened. Definitely a person that felt sorry for herself a lot, and every time she got drunk, she was very, very emotional. So. But I thought it was funny, and it was a good place to put it in my book. In my review.
I've cried in the bathtub several times, and I've never been drunk. It's just, especially in the shower, if you need to bawl.
No, I mean just fully clothed in the bathtub. They're in the middle of a party. So.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe not, but even then, I wouldn't have been like, I don't believe that. If she's like crying in the shower while zombies are attacking or something, then I might be like, of course, if that's the way she wants to go. Far be it for me to judge. So, and no actual genies in your life.
No actual genies.
That's so sad.
I did though. So in Three Wishes, she does. One of the characters does do a past life regression therapy, and I actually looked into doing that because for many years, and I honestly believe this, I must have lived in New Orleans in the past life, because whenever I go there, I feel like I'm home. Like this is where I belong. This is where I've been before. I walk around, everything feels familiar. So I said, I'm gonna go to a past life regression therapist at one point, and I never did it. So I decided to let my character do it since I never did.
Do you think you ever will?
Maybe. I don't know.
I want to know. I want to know what that's like. That's so neat. But I want you to do it, not me. So, now you have to do that report back. I don't know how much it costs. So if it costs thousands of dollars, don't do it.
It was $150 for the session.
150. Yeah, that's still a big chunk of change. I don't know. Be great kind of research though. So we do have a question in the chat roll, which was, do you all have rituals that you engage in when you finish a book that help provide closure? And so what are your rituals, Dena?
Besides celebrating that it's done and those characters are happy.
That's a ritual?
And then dreading the next book I have to start. No, just
do you celebrate any specific way?
Yeah, generally just dinner, drinks, that kind of stuff. That's a major thing. Queso, margaritas.
Queso, margaritas, and crying in the bathtub. It sounds like a good evening to me.
I know. I got a nice big tray. Just slide it in there, right?
Yeah. And if you spill, it's fine because you're in the tub. Yep. Anne, do you have any rituals?
Have a glass of wine.
That's a glass of wine. That's a good one. Tagan.
Yeah, I split a bottle of Veuve Clicquot champagne with the wife, and she's celebrating as much as I am because she doesn't have to hear about these people who don't exist anymore.
That is a good one. I like that one. Susie, do you have any rituals?
I do. When I turn it in, when I hit the button to turn it in, the final, final edit, and it's done, I have a specific song that I put on and I dance. And in closed doors so nobody can see me. But
Oh, that's adorable.
turn it up really loud and the whole house vibrates and I just dance.
What's
Wait,
the song?
what's the song?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell you.
Oh, Susie,
All right,
come
well, I don't know
on.
if you can see my banjo in the back, so you can see that I like country and western music, and it is I'm not gonna tell you.
It's now, well, in my head now, it's I'm Too Sexy by Wright and Fred. So, and unless you
Play
tell
with the
us,
banjo.
that's what's
Oh,
gonna,
the
oh, on the
banjo.
banjo, even
It's-
better.
It's a girl group. That's all I'm gonna tell you.
Oh,
Bananarama.
It's country western. No, it's a girl group. It's country western.
Bell Gord's Country Western, Dixie
Dixie
Chicks.
Dixie
Yeah,
Chicks.
it's-
Okay, Georgia, we'll quit picking on Susie. What's yours, Georgia?
I pop a bottle of champagne after every book, and I write the date and the title of the book on the cork, and I have all of the corks.
Nice.
And then I get a massage.
Oh, nice. Do you have the corks there?
I
they
do not.
handy?
They're upstairs.
Oh,
but
that's
I
okay.
do
Don't go anywhere. I'd never make people climb stairs ever
not.
for any reason. Oh, that's so good. So, okay. So now everyone's got to speculate and ask Suzie Clarke next time they see her what her finished song is.
I'm going to GCLS this year finally and get to go because last year I had an accident on the trail and couldn't go. But I'm going to go after my surgery this year, so I'll let you know there. How's that? I'll tell
So
you.
I
Yes.
say we just play Dixie Chick
GCLS.
songs and see which one she dances to.
Karaoke night. Karaoke
Yeah.
night. There you go.
That is awesome. Yes, just every time you go by, have one on your phone and just start playing it and be like, oh,
She starts tapping her toe.
is she gonna dance? Oh, that is awesome. Yeah, somebody says there in the chat roll, we can have the DJ play it.
Okay, yeah, we'll play it that night. Reveal
Then the
it.
Saturday night, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's a
that'd be
dance,
so
yeah.
awesome. Yes, I'd also like to remind everybody that BSB is having a bookathon sale, 20% off 2023 ebooks. All you got to do is go there and you can get all the fabulous books by all these fabulous women. And I am out of questions, and you people listening have not come through. Laying down on the job, and we still have 2 minutes left. So I have to think of something real quick that's about fact or fiction, or even not. Pets. Have you ever put any of your real life pets? Have they ever appeared in your stories, or pets of friends?
I have, yeah. My cat, Sir Rufus McNibbles, appeared.
Sir Rufus McNibbles.
Sir Rufus McNibbles.
It's actually Sir Rufus McNibbles, Duke of Fluff and Stuff. But
Dead.
that's
is
not
the
his name in
best.
the book, but his name is Nicodemus in Almost Perfect. So
And Tuffy made it into one of mine, Next Exit Home, but since then I've lost Tuffy, and now I have Peppa.
Oh,
Peppa is brand new to me, but she will be in a book soon. So
Georgia, you were nodding too.
Yeah, in Finding Home, the dog Bentley is Finley.
Ah.
Finley showed up in several books. Henry showed up in a couple, but they're all of my dogs have been in the books. Archie hasn't made an appearance yet, but he will.
He will. He will. Anne or Susie?
Yeah, I had a dog, the kids' with family dog. We had it for 14 years, and I changed his name to protect the kids because I didn't want them crying every time they read about him. So I changed the name, but yeah, a dog.
Well,
I
somebody
have
did.
one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Anne, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you. We could just do this for the next 2 minutes. No, you.
I have one that's in the current one I'm working on. His name is Sebastian. He's a cat who was a reincarnated sorcerer.
I love it. I noticed he needs to make, what was his name? Sir Nibbles Fluff and Stuff? What was his name?
Sir Rufus McNibbles.
So
Yes.
Rufus McNibbles, that
I'll
was
see
it.
if Sebastian knows.
Okay, so very quickly now before we end, what is everybody working on? Let's start for the bottom of my screen, Georgia.
What we're working on or what's coming up next?
What's coming up next?
What's coming up next in April for me is Aubrey McFadden is never getting married.
I bet she is.
Title. That's a great title.
And what about you?
I'm working on, well, what's coming up next is something really sexy. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, nice.
Ooh, oh yeah, I
Leather
love that
lace and
cover.
Yes,
locks.
Lace and Locks. Yes.
Leather, Lace, and Locks. It's a
Leather,
sexy
Lace,
little
and
novel about three best friends and their dating and sex lives.
Awesome.
Nice. Susie, what about you?
I am just starting to work on a cold case novel
Huh?
about a little girl who was missing for 30 years, and they finally find her body, and it just rips her friends in town apart. So
Oh
it's
dear.
yeah.
Tagan.
My May release is called Cabin Fever. It's your traditional two women who don't like each other very much get stuck in a snowy
Stuck in
cabin.
a cabin. I love it.
Oh!
My favorite.
Yes, and they get into an argument and the Murphy bed slowly falls down from the wall. Yes.
And there's only
only
one
one.
bed, of course, only one bed, you know.
Ah.
Amusingly, that is one of my favorite romance tropes and also my favorite horror trope.
Perfect.
The way to
Perfect.
blend both of our loves. Dena Blake.
So I'm working on 3 Blissful Days. It's about a park ranger and a landscape architect that are working on designing a new lodge, state lodge, and they don't get along very well at first.
But
and
there's
then-
only one room left and
Right,
it's snowing.
exactly. And it's a fake relationship. So tropes.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, my lovely panelists. It has been a very, very, very fun panel, and there's more coming up. So stay tuned, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, y'all.